Hello again, my little conscripts, and welcome to another Mordian Glory video. In today's episode, I want to talk about Bolt Action, which is a game I've been really enjoying recently, both casually and competitively. And it's that latter topic that I want to have a little bit of a chit and, dare I say, chat about today. You see, since the new edition of Bolt Action dropped, version 3, I've been going to a number of tournaments, and it's been really interesting going into a different gaming environment. I'm really familiar with how 40k and the competitive meta of that operates, but things are a bit different over in Bolt Action, and so I thought I would share my experience of that competitive scene, warts and all, the heady heights and the terrible lows. And so without further ado, let's fix bayonets and charge right into today's episode.
Attention guardsmen, the commissariat has detected you have not yet liked this video. Do so immediately or else you will face the Emperor's wrath. And anyone who has not yet subscribed to the channel will be transferred to the penal battalions. That is all. Move out!
So first things first, let's start off on a positive note and begin with one of the best bits about playing a Bolt Action tournament. And that is just being able to play so many games in one day. Sometimes it can be kind of tricky to find a game of Bolt Action because it's not quite on the same scale of popularity as 40k. That's just a fact. There's no point in trying to hide it. It has grown in popularity a lot recently, and I know loads and loads of people have been getting into it, and it's been doing really well on my channel as more and more people just want to try out something a bit different and a bit new. But for a lot of people, there just isn't anyone that plays Bolt Action in their local area. So one of the best bits about tournaments is you can scratch that itch. You can get your game on and you get to play with your models. I know that might sound kind of obvious, but it's something that I think we take for granted with 40k these days, and it's one that definitely shouldn't be overlooked. But moving on to the second best bit about Bolt Action tournaments, it's the terrain. I have yet to go to a Bolt Action tournament which doesn't have beautiful and immersive and frankly bloody fantastic terrain. There are no L-shaped MDF one-color ruins on these boards. No sirree. There will be beautifully themed Pacific boards. There will be Russian villages getting fought over. There will be churches. There will be towns. And the way you interact with that terrain is so much more immersive as well. Sometimes you'll want to run around it. Sometimes you'll want to bunker down in it. Being able to go down inside the terrain will make your units more durable. Getting inside buildings, well, it's a bit of a trade-off. Sometimes it can offer you hard cover. Sometimes it can be a death trap when someone launches a heavy howitzer shell through the window. Terrain is just really, really immersive just looking at it. It's very aesthetically pleasing, but also it's a factor that you want to take into account when you are playing the game. And you don't know exactly what the terrain is going to be like, and sometimes it's not going to be balanced. The roll-off to decide which side of the board you are going to pick can genuinely matter, and it adds an extra layer of strategic depth. And this kind of leads me on to my next point, which is the randomness of Bolt Action. Sometimes when you go to 40k events, it feels like you're doing the same thing over and over again because things are so standardized. Now that has a great advantage because it means you know when you go to a 40k event exactly what you are signing up for. But it can be a double-edged sword because it also means you know exactly what you're going to sign up for. And once you've been to a few tournaments, it can get a little bit samey. With Bolt Action, every single tournament I've been to has been different. There have been different missions, there have been different terrain layouts, there has been different sort of home rules and all this kind of stuff. It means that every single time you go to a tournament, there is a little bit of randomness, and that can make things interesting and it can make things fresh and exciting. Quick side note, this is one of my favorite things about Bolt Action in general, this randomness, these crazy things that can happen. You'd never find the foobar chart in 40k, for example, and if you're a 40k player, what foobar means is if you fail your battle shock test or your morale check badly enough, then your troops might not just go down and not do as they're told, they might actively fight against you. And it is possible for one of your units to shoot an officer in the back and then run off the board if they foobar bad enough. It's really cool, and it can completely change the situation of a game, and it can lead to these crazy reversals of fortune. And just whilst we're on this side note, I want to take it one step further. I really like the fact that bolt action doesn't have a lot of rerolls in it, because it can make for really tense moments, which are amplified on the competitive scene. Maybe you need to destroy that enemy tank. You've got a anti-tank gun dug in. It's going to be hitting on a 3+, but you roll a 1 or a 2. There's nothing you can do about it. You've just got to wear it and hope that you can get it next time. But not everything about the bolt action competitive scene is perfect. And if you're going to get involved in it, there's probably a few flies in the ointment that you're going to need to be aware of. Firstly, it's a wild west. You know how I mentioned before that the lack of consistency can make things interesting? Well, I also said it was a double-edged sword, and I don't think I've been to a tournament yet where I haven't been caught out by some house rule or some TO interpretation of a rule in the rulebook. It means that you're not ever quite sure what you're going to encounter, and that can be exciting, but it can also be a little bit frustrating. Maybe you're used to playing on a nice balanced mix of terrain. Maybe you're used to having a bit of soft cover, a bit of dent, a bit of hard cover, and you go to a tournament and it's just everything is soft cover or everything is hard cover, or the boards are just really open, there's not enough terrain. There's no standard terrain maps, there's no set mission packs. It's just whatever that TO happens to have come up with. And sometimes that's great, but sometimes it can be a little bit crazy and a little bit bad. So be aware that each time you go to a tournament, you're going to get a different experience, and that's both positive and negative. Leading on from that, I just mentioned TO interpretations, and sometimes it's different between events. There's definitely a vagueness to some of the bolt action rules. And there's also, I would say, less shared knowledge between the players. Some players will read a rule and interpret it one way. Some players will read a rule and interpret another way. Some players will read something and it just makes sense. Like, of course, that's the way it's meant to be run. But some people will read it and go, well, actually, rules are written. It's meant to be this way. There is, I would say, just as much rules lawyering that goes on in bolt action as it does in any other game. The problem is that there tends to be less FAQs, there tends to be less sort of case studies that you can point to, and also you tend to find that each TO also has their own sort of way of doing things and interpreting stuff. So be aware that if you ask a TO over, sometimes they might rule in a way that you don't agree with, but that's just the way that they've always done it. It just comes down to, again, the fact it's a bit of a wild west, especially with a new edition, everyone's still learning it, and bolt action is a bit more of a smaller community, so sometimes there's less of that shared knowledge. And the last fly I want to talk about is a bit of a big one, but it's also a bit of a delicate one, so I want to approach this with as much tact as possible, because I don't want to upset anyone. But I would say that the players in competitive bolt action, there is definitely a cadre, there's definitely a sub-community of sweatlords. It's very reminiscent of the mentality that was present in 6th edition and 7th edition Warhammer 40k. People pushing the boundaries of the rules, interpreting things in their favour, or just browbeating a little bit. We don't have that as much, anywhere near as much as we did in Warhammer 40k. It kind of all got chased out in 8th edition with a couple of high-profile live stream games where bad behaviour was caught and then everyone just collectively agreed, we don't want that in our game. And so those kind of players then essentially got pushed out or were kind of forced to reform and think about how they're approaching the game. But bolt action doesn't really have that. And so I would say every single tournament that I've been to, I've either noticed or I've played against someone who's maybe been a little bit sweaty. There's definitely been some gotchas. I mean, some gotchas are written right into the rules. For example, you've got Recce, which means if you shoot at an enemy unit which has the Recce special rule, they can move their unit. And if they move it out of line of sight, then you just don't get to shoot it. And unlike in 40k, where you would be able to retrain that shot onto something else, Recce specifically states that the shot is just wasted. It's just wasted. Now, I've definitely had a few moments where people have tried to gotcha me with Recce, and I've had to say, well, you didn't tell me in your list that that unit had Recce. And they were like, oh, well, you should have asked. And it's like, well, no, because I told you exactly what was in my list, and I told you where my Recce was. So there's definitely a little bit of sweat in the community. And like I said, it's definitely something you're going to have to be aware of. Play for intention is there, but it's not there everywhere. And to be fair to bolt action, this is not a problem unique to the game. It's something I've also encountered with Warhammer the Old World as well, where there's about 95% of players, I said that's true for bolt action as well, 95% of players who are lovely and just get it, and everyone's laughing and we're playing as intended and take backs and all, and no gotchas. But then there's sort of 5 to 10% of the players where it's like, well, tough titties, you know, you didn't ask, you didn't get, I'm going to gotcha you, or I'm going to try and twist things, and I'm going to try and bamboozle you a little bit. There's definitely a vein of that runs through games like Old World as well. And I think that it's a testament to Warhammer 40k that is very, very rarely encountered. I can't tell you the last time I encountered that at a 40k tournament. I don't think I've encountered it once in 10th edition. And I think it goes to show how far 40k has come, but it gives me hope, because it's the kind of attitude that I can see is developing and becoming better and better and better in games like Bolt Action and in games like Old World. And I would say that if you're coming into Bolt Action and you want to get involved in the competitive scene, my advice to you would be the change you want to see. If you don't like the idea of sweaty play, then don't be sweaty. Lead by example. That's something that I've been trying to do in the game, and I've had loads of people respond really positively to that. And I think it just makes the competitive scene nicer for everyone and more welcoming. So it's only a small thing. Like I said, I don't want a bad apple to spoil the bunch or anything like that, but it's just something to be aware of. If you're going to get into the game, there is a chance, if you go to a tournament, you might encounter a bit of a sweat lord. Don't let it bother you, and just play the game, and you be the change you want to see, and you be the good example. So to summarize all of this, I think that competitive action is really good because there's lots of randomness, there's no rerolls, there's great terrain, and it's an opportunity to play loads of games against a bunch of fantastic blokes. But it is a bit of a wild west. You are going to find things quite inconsistent, and you're going to have to be able to adapt and roll with the punches. And there is a chance that you might play against some pretty sweaty people, but make sure you don't let it bother you. Of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Have you had any experience of competitive bot action or other games? And what was your experience in comparison to something like Warhammer 40k? If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to smash that like button and also subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Bon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously, guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video. And of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.